Dr. Wall and Dr. Galanis, and thank all of you for being here today. This is a much larger crowd than I was expecting. I went to some Comm Week events back in the day, and I don't think I was getting extra credit for it. I feel like some of you are getting extra credit. But no, thank you for being here today. It's always great to come back and have a chance to do things like this with the university that I obviously care so much about. And thank you to everyone in the communication department. I know not only for all of the work that you do all year, but especially all of the planning and preparation that goes into this entire week, and I think that the students really get a lot out of it. And so everyone be sure to thank your professors and everyone in the communication department for putting this on for us. I'm here today to talk a little bit about myself and my life since graduation, which is not a really long period of time. Like Dr. Galanis said, I just graduated in December of 2013, and so just barely over 2 months ago. And so to give you a little bit of background, since I can't tell you a whole lot about my career history because it's relatively short and we are going to get to that, I'll tell you a little bit about my experiences here at MSU, the things that I was involved in during my time here. I came to Missouri State in the fall of 2009 and was a double major within the communication department in public relations and socio-political communication. So spent a lot of time with the comm faculty. You guys are in really good hands. I'm sure that you already know that. But during my time here was involved in a really wide range of activities. Kind of like Dr. Galanis said, I initially came to Missouri State, had not planned on coming here. I'm from Neosho, which is south of Joplin, about an hour away, and I had planned on going to school much further away and going to like these really enormous schools. Came here to Missouri State, and like she mentioned, wasn't immediately engaged and really felt like I wasn't connecting and wasn't really making the most of about, I would say, my first semester here, and really set out to change that from that point on. And so I was involved with groups like Residence Life and Services, the University Ambassadors, obviously a part of the fraternity and sorority life community, and then during my junior and senior year spent most of my time and energy with the Student Government Association. And so that's really where a lot of my experiences came from on campus. And like I said, I was really involved on campus, I guess for those 3.5 years, aside from that initial first semester, but realized as I stayed one additional semester, just this last fall, that I had never been involved in anything outside of campus. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on, but beyond my campus involvement, I spent that last semester, actually I was only enrolled in one course, PED, as a fifth-year senior, so that was fun, with all the freshmen. It was a great time. But so during that time, I obviously had some free time and really chose to consciously make an effort to get some internships. I was like, I've done all this stuff on campus. That's great. At the end of the day, I have no internship experience. I've never been involved in anything outside of campus, and so spent some time with the City of Springfield and their public information office, so like a lot of press releases, a lot of writing, if that's the kind of thing that interests you. Spent some time with the Springfield Regional Arts Council, doing like some marketing and PR work for them, and then also was with the Urban Districts Alliance, which is a group out of downtown Springfield, for a couple of months, primarily doing event coordination, volunteer work, and planning some events for them. And so I was really lucky to have the opportunity, as Dr. Galanis said, really as a result of the connections that I had made on campus, to kind of score those internships. And I would really stress that to all of you. I know that applying for internships is tedious and it's exhausting, and it can like really make you feel down about yourself because you're sending out all these emails and maybe you're not hearing back from people. But just be persistent and think about the connections that you've made on campus and the connections that you may have in the community, and just continue to always look for those opportunities to get an internship. Oftentimes people maybe haven't even considered bringing on an intern. I know several friends personally who have just reached out to individuals that work in the field they're interested in, and maybe their website doesn't say anything about an internship program. Maybe that person has never had an intern and they've never thought about even doing that. And I actually know 2 people personally who have just emailed people and said, you know, can I just kind of shadow you? Can I be an intern for a few months? I'm like, well, I never thought about that. Of course you can. And so people are often very open to that idea, but maybe they've never thought about it before. And so that's another approach that you can look to take. So that's a little bit about my life prior to graduation. I did graduate in December of 2013. Seems like it was yesterday because it almost was. But I am now the program coordinator for the network with the Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce. And so what that means is that the chamber is obviously focused on economic development and job growth in the region. And as part of that, they've really heard from business owners and hiring personnel in the area that they are experiencing a talent shortage. They say, you know, we like having our business located here in Springfield. we just routinely run into this problem of we're looking to hire people, and we don't have the applicants that we want, people that are of that really high quality, and they say that there's a talent shortage. And so one thing that the Chamber has done to try to deal with that, they've done a lot of different things, but one thing that they developed in 2007 was a group called the Network, which is considered the premier organization for people who are under 39 in Springfield that want to advance their career, they want to be involved in the community, they believe in philanthropic service. And so this is an organization that people join. Their employers typically pay for their membership dues, and we host events for them, really a wide range of professional development events. We may bring in guest speakers or do a panel, do a lot of tours of facilities, kind of getting people out in the community, maybe places they haven't seen before, talking about community events. And then we also do some stuff that's purely social, just so people can get to know one another. Like I said, it's been around since 2007. There are about roughly 400 members, and so that's kind of my job, is just overseeing every aspect of that group. And as the only person who works on the network at the Chamber, it's kind of funny, the group has been around since 2007, and there's never been a full-time staff person until now. They were just kind of sharing it amongst everyone who works at the Chamber, and they finally realized, okay, this is grown enough that we just need a person to do it all the time. And so part of that is membership and a recruitment, if you're familiar with recruiting for different organizations that you're a part of on campus. Part of my efforts are centered around membership recruitment. The Chamber has a goal of gaining or hitting 500 members this year. And so that's part of my day-to-day duties, is going out and talking to people about joining the network, why they should join. By the way, you should all join. So, but also looking to increase corporate sponsorships. I spend a lot of my time meeting with business owners and CEOs and talking to them about the mission of the network and how that relates to their business, saying, do you have a talent shortage? Have you experienced this? Are you looking for young people in this area, and you understand the value of retaining talent in Springfield? And they often do. And so those are our sponsors, and they allow us to do the programming, which is the bulk of my work in terms of arranging all of the programs, handling all of the RSVPs and just making sure that everything is ready. We do, roughly 3 events a month for the membership, and so that's kind of a lot of the event planning side of things. And so that's a pretty good summary of what I do for the Chamber now. It's only been a month, and so I know that I have a lot to learn. And part of me was even kind of nervous as I prepared my notes for today because, like Dr. Glenis said, you guys have heard from awesome people all week if you've been at the previous sessions, and people who have been out and been working for a long time and have really had the time to learn those lessons, and I'm just kind of starting that process. And so I do have some things that I want to share, hopefully, that will be of value to you, and then we'll open it up for questions, which feel free to ask. Something that I spoke about, something I didn't address at all, whatever you may be wondering about. But since I haven't been in the workforce for a huge amount of time, wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that I faced leading up to graduation, things that I'm sure that other people have dealt with as well. Surely I wasn't the only one going through those things. Things that I think it's important to remember, and just stuff along those lines. And so some of the stuff that I think I have learned during my first month of work would be to ask questions. Always ask questions, and don't be afraid of looking dumb. Because if you don't ask for clarification and you just assume that you'll be able to figure something out, one, you might do it wrong, and so you can get in trouble for doing it wrong. And then secondly, your excuse is going to be, well, I didn't know how to do it. And then it's well, secondly, you look dumb for not asking how to do it. And so don't be afraid to ask questions. Obviously, be respectful about that. That doesn't mean that you're blurting out and interrupting people in meetings, but take a note if someone mentions something that you don't understand. The world deals in a lot of acronyms. Especially on campus, there are acronyms for everything. And so my first month at work, I've been in these meetings where people are blah, 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 blah. I'm just I don't know what any of that means. Write it down, ask someone later, that way you can know. And so the second thing that I think I've learned that kind of goes along with that is I think there's a lot of value in being the person in the room who knows the least. And I think as young people, we're often really intimidated by that. You might, if you're at an internship and you go into a staff meeting or you're at a work event and you're the youngest person there, you're the person with the least amount of work experience, maybe you don't know anyone in the room, anything, any of those factors. It could be all of those, one of those, anything. I think there's a lot of value to being in that situation because when you're the person in the room who knows the least, you're the person who stands to gain the most from that experience. And so don't miss out on that opportunity to leave. You should leave that room knowing a lot more than you went into it knowing. So don't let that intimidate you. You have every opportunity to walk away from that with knowledge that you didn't previously have, and you really stand to grow a lot from each of those experiences. And so I know it's hard to kind of consistently go out and put yourself in those situations where you're the person who knows the least, you're the youngest, you may feel out of place, but it's going to benefit you in the long run, and I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you become with that, and so that's just something that I would like to share. Some other things that I'd like to touch upon are probably a lot of things that you've heard from people before, or things that you've seen in a Facebook article that was shared a million times on your timeline or anything like that, but I think there's value to that, because when you hear some pieces of advice being told over and over, most of the time that's because there's some truth to that sentiment. It's been tested, it's been proven, and people know that it works. And so I know that sometimes as you approach graduation, you get all this advice and it seems really cliche. You're like, I've heard that a million times. I've seen it on someone's desktop background, like a little mantra, whatever it may be. And I know it gets really old, but take it to heart and don't feel like you're too cool to learn something from anyone else. I know that's something that I have fallen into before, oh, I've heard that before. But the reason that people are telling you these things is because that they know that there's value there, and they know that you can potentially learn something. And so the first thing I would say, which is going to seem really obvious, but work really hard, especially when you're new on the job. Everyone in the office is going to be kind of watching you to some extent or another to gauge, and just form their opinion of you. On campus, if you're doing things, you obviously have a reputation. So if you have this reputation of being, really great, super dependable, awesome at everything, and you join an organization, the people in that organization are going to know that about you. They're going to already kind of have an impression formed of you, and that can definitely work to your benefit if you're the type of person that has, that reputation. But when you come into a new job like I did, those people don't know anything about you, and so they're definitely going to be watching you, and they're going to be seeing, how you work. They're going to be forming an opinion of you. And so work really hard, especially in the beginning, all the time, but especially in the beginning. You need to demonstrate that you were the right hiring choice, because, the job market is tough. And so you need to, ensure to them that they made the right decision by hiring you. And I think a lot of really successful but relatively young people credit a lot of their success to the fact that when they were young, they were willing to work really, really hard, while everyone else may have been out doing a lot of other things. And I know that that's really tempting, and there's definitely something to be said for keeping a balance, which I'll talk about later on also. But, sometimes sacrificing things right now can have a huge payoff later. And so work really hard and be committed to that. Secondly, I would say to seek out a mentor. And this can be someone on campus, someone in the community who works in the field that you're interested in. It could really be anyone. I would say when you're looking to seek out a mentor or mentors, more than one, don't box yourself into what this has to look like. This is going to be a guy who wears a suit, works at a bank because I want to be a banker, anything like that. Be really open-minded and know that virtually anyone is going to have something they can offer you, something that you can learn from them, and they can be a resource in some way or another. And so seek out a mentor. And oftentimes also, I know that young people can be intimidated when it comes to asking people for something like that, asking to have that relationship with someone. But what I would say is that people who have worked in a career or an industry for a significant portion of their life, they obviously care about that type of work. If someone has been doing PR for 40 years, they obviously care about PR, or they care about accounting, they care about being a doctor. And at some point, we all realize that we're not going to live forever. And so people know and are concerned about the futures of their industry, and they should want to mentor you because they understand that you are the upcoming workforce, and why would they not want you to be as well prepared as possible for when they do leave? And so don't be afraid to ask people for that. That's something I think that everyone realizes, and a lot of people, again, just haven't been approached, and so don't be afraid to do that. I would also say know what you don't know. That's something that I think is important, because everyone has weaknesses, whether it's a specific skill or just a general topic area. I think the worst thing about not knowing something is not being willing or able to admit that you don't know it. And so know what it is that you don't know. Essentially know what you're bad at, what you're not very good at. I'm really bad at computer techie things, and the chamber is actually in the middle of getting a whole new website, and they were saying the other day that everyone is just going to essentially rewrite the coding for their own pages. And the network obviously has a page on the chamber. Yeah, everyone's just going to decide what they want it to look like. And I was like, I just need to be upfront with you, and like, I can't do that. That's not going to work very well. And so then obviously people are willing to accommodate and say, well, we can have someone work with you. Like, you'll be working with this person who can help you decide what it needs to look like and how we can arrange that. And so know what you don't know and know when you need to be able to verbalize that, and then obviously continue to like work on those areas and improve on those things, but know what you don't know and be willing to admit it when it comes up. Take personal responsibility. This is going to seem really obvious, but we get away with a lot in college. I mean, people are like, oh, college kids, yeah, of course they did that, you know, whatever. And I think prior to that, we're in high school where we get away with a lot because we're considered to be really young, and it's not going to be that way beyond graduation. And so people aren't going to have those same excuses for you, and they're not going to be willing to kind of look the other way. And so take personal responsibility when you mess up, when you miss a meeting, forget a deadline. Obviously, you should be working really, really hard to make sure that those things never happen, but everyone makes a mistake at some point in their life. And so be willing to own up to it, because I think people will obviously have more respect for you than if you were to just be giving the same excuses that you've been giving people since you were 15 or 16. That just isn't going to really fly in the workforce. But I know that none of you would ever do any of those things anyway. I would also say volunteer for everything. This is something that I can personally say, led to the job that I'm in now. If you are in an internship role, if you're working with someone for an organization, volunteer for every task. Like, no matter how small it is, if you're stuffing envelopes, loading things in and out of a van, like showing up early on a Saturday to set up for an event, whatever it may be, volunteer for everything, be enthusiastic about it, have a good attitude. Obviously, I talk about like intern abuse. You watch the line so that you don't cross into like intern abuse where people are just like making you do like all of these really bizarre things, especially if you're not being compensated in any way with credit or pay, but do volunteer for everything within reason. Like I said, that this did lead to me having the job that I have now. I actually, when I was with the Urban Districts Alliance, volunteered to work the Christmas parade early on the cold morning after graduation, where I met a gentleman who works at the chamber, and we were just talking, and he's like, well, did you graduate? I said, 24 hours ago, yes, just graduated. And he was like, well, you seem great for this job that we're trying to fill. Like, we're writing the job description right now. Like, why don't you send me your email? And so that's how I have the job that I have now. You never know who you're going to meet wherever it may be. And so don't miss the opportunity to introduce yourself to someone, shake their hand, tell them who you are, what you're interested in, and first of all, like, show up, which means volunteer for everything. I would also say get involved in the community. This is something that I touched on earlier, because being really involved in college is great, and I'm all about that. Like, you'll have the best experiences, and you'll make friends, and you'll hopefully become close to advisors who can serve as a great resource for you down the road. But it's really easy, like I said, to have those MSU blinders on. Even if you don't live on campus, you are probably still spending most of your waking hours here, especially if you're the type of person who's involved in organizations outside of class time, and you're going to meetings and all these different events. And so make an effort to get off campus and out into the community. Volunteer work is a great way to do that. It's also a great way to meet people while you're out at these places doing volunteer work. If you want to become civically involved, the city is really receptive to young people. They love having young people involved on projects. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, like local politics, that sort of thing. And so just find what it is that interests you and find a way to become engaged in that type of activity off campus, because that's just going to put you so much further ahead. Like, being involved on campus is great, and that's like the first natural step that's going to put you ahead, but being involved off campus is even better, because that's when you're going to start meeting people in the community, people who have even more connections, and so like the further that you can spread yourself out, the better off you're going to be. And I would also say to use technology to your advantage. I'm not going to lecture about social media pictures. That's not where I'm going with that. Some people say that technology is destroying human relationships, and other people say that it's saving us by bringing us closer together. I think that they're both wrong. Technology is just a tool. It's just something that we have and that we use. But it's a resource that has a lot to offer people, and I think people sometimes forget, because it is great to watch cat videos and read really funny tweets. But use technology to your full advantage. Never before have people had the ability to share their art or their ideas or their work with people all over the world at essentially no cost to you, And so set up a blog, set up a YouTube channel, online portfolio, like whatever it is that you're into, like use technology to your advantage to reach as many people as possible, because it's not going to hurt anything. And it's at your disposal, and it makes you look really tech savvy, which is great for employers. And I mean, again, it's at no cost to you, and so I don't know why you wouldn't want to take advantage of that. I have two final pieces of advice that I want to share before we take questions. They're a little different than the other ones, but I think they're just as important as anything else that I had to say today. Approaching graduation and like your senior year and all of that can be an incredibly stressful time. I mean, honestly, all of college can be an incredibly stressful time. I think as you get closer to graduation, it feels like someone like put you in a roller coaster and they didn't pull down the handlebar and like the whole thing just took off. And so as hard as it can be, like, don't let like the anxiety and the fear just like cripple you. I know everyone is different when it comes to that kind of thing. I'm naturally a very anxious person, and so I can tell you that as I got closer and closer to graduation, I mean, I was freaking out every single day. It's such a special time in your life. Don't let yourself become overwhelmed by that stress. You know, graduation is scary. Yes. The job market is tough. Yes. Like, it's intimidating. Yes. People are going to ask you what your life plan is. You're going to want to scream and run away. I don't know why anyone asks anyone that. It's like the worst question in the world. Like, how are you expected to have that figured out? Don't worry about that. You know, I was doing all this less than 12 weeks ago, and I was absolutely convinced, even on the morning of graduation, that I was going to be unemployed forever. That I was never going to find work. I was going to, like, you know, live in a cardboard box, like all these horrible things. So just don't let that be you, is essentially what I'm saying. Just take a breath, be confident in yourself, your abilities, and your experiences. You know, that's all that you can do. All that you can control is the things that you're doing now, the things you're involved in, and the experiences that you're, you know, like making a part of yourself. And so if you graduate and you have a college degree, you're already so much more fortunate than a huge portion of the global population. And so really take that to heart and remember how lucky you are to have done what you have done, and things will come together. It's not always immediate, you know, but it will happen. Have a little bit of faith, continue to work your resources, reach out to people. If you have to take another job in the meantime, like, don't stress about it. Like, that's not an issue. I mean, the issue is if you give up and just decide to quit trying, and you're just like, no, whatever, and you're really sad about that. So don't do that, but just have a little faith and things will work out. Don't ever stop looking and something will happen. The last thing is that, like, we're all really busy. Life is like messy and hectic and, again, really stressful. I have a feeling it just gets worse as you like marry people and have kids and buy houses and do all of those things. And so as difficult as it is, even now as a student, just remember to try to find some type of balance. I mean, you're juggling your classes, work, internships, friends, like living situations, roommate drama, whatever it may be. At the end of the day, like, human relationships are everything. And so make time for your friends, make time for your family, maintaining those relationships with the people that you care about. Those are the people who are going to have your back when you are really stressed out the day before graduation. And so it's just important to maintain those relationships. I can't stress that enough. And it's really difficult, and it's a two-way street, and so just reach out to the people that you care about and make sure that you're doing that on at least a pretty regular basis. Those are the people that you need to keep close. They'll support you and offer you guidance, and you're not going to have anyone to celebrate landing your dream job with if you don't hang on to your friends. So that's what I would say that you need to do. And thank you guys for having me.